So if you are a visual person, or if you're auditory, if you're hands-on, there's something for everyone to get behind and understand the concepts behind what blockchain actually is. So yeah, I'm the founder of Nodeunlock, and we started in January, focusing on blockchain education initially, and now we've expanded to the future of work and being a kind of creative innovation studio is what we call it. So teaching people about emotional intelligence, creative thinking, and how to actually provide value to businesses once AI and machine learning actually takes over. So that's in part what we do for businesses as well as professionals.
Great, it's very important because from my experience, what I have seen, just the general understanding of the blockchain is at very, very low level.
Yeah.
So people
Yeah.
just have no idea what it's about.
Absolutely.
So that's why it's a great
It starts
idea
with
just to
education.
educate people.
Yeah.
What's the advantage in the use of blockchain?
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you do in the space?
Basically, I'm I'm a business development
Yep.
person working for different companies. I'm a little bit of smart contracts developer
Yep.
at junior level, and in general, I'm just an enthusiast of new technologies.
Great.
And I'm somehow related more or less in IT environment,
Yep.
and as itself with the blockchain.
Yep.
But basically what I do is just new business development for different companies, and then sometimes an advisor, sometimes I just a project manager.
Yep.
So and I just like this technology, and I believe, like many people, that this is the new way.
Yep.
Just like internet in 1995, it will be in 10 years. This is just beginning of the wave.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's why I'm trying to follow it, understand it. I try to understand it a little bit from the underneath it.
Yeah.
So I try to get into technical details. So
How do you find that journey?
oh, it's very interesting. The more
Yeah.
you learn, then you know you need to learn more just
Yeah.
to understand, and all depends how deep you want to get in.
Yeah.
Just if you have the main understanding of the blockchain, it's fine. Then you get underneath it and you start working on the Merkle tree or Patricia Merkle trees,
Yep.
and then you get okay. So then you get into hashing algorithm and how the blocks transfer each other information, and
Yeah.
then another. There are some questions to be answered, and so
Yeah.
on, so on. And I like to develop, and I just want to connect my future with this subject, and
Cool.
just that's why I'm doing different stuff. My main job is not related with blockchain.
Right.
It's from the standard IT, so it's just development of let's say so standard websites, software.
Yep.
Yeah, like the traditional ones.
Yep.
Not related to blockchain at least. But more and more, I'm just trying to get hot with blockchain. Trying to maybe not to be advisor because I don't think my level of knowledge is big enough. But I have met many people who say they have the knowledge, but I don't think they do. And I have also
I would
met
agree
some
with that.
people who don't say they have the knowledge, but they do. So lately I have been running some workshops with the people
Great.
who have been working with the Ethereum network
Yep.
since the very beginning, and they have the knowledge that is really overwhelming. So I'm trying to just to understand more, and like your initiative is great because before the mass adoption, people don't, because I believe that people don't need to know how it works. This is just like with the internet.
Yep.
Mainly people don't know how it works. Like I'm talking about TCP/IP protocol.
Absolutely.
Even the software developers, most of them, they might know, but they don't care about that. They
Yep.
just take this for granted, that there is something, a code or library or something that is connecting with something, and something is happening. So they don't get into details with TCP/IP. And this is the same with blockchain,
Yep.
but it has to be user friendly, and I'm working with some friends who are developing the user interface and user experience. And basically, the 99% of the blockchain products is not user-friendly.
Absolutely.
And this is just for
We're
the
in the very
programmers.
early 1990s.
Yeah, and this is like if you are trying to do anything and you are not a software developer, it's very hard. I mean, it's not possible for average person to do this. Maybe except using some wallets.
Yep.
This is all right, but
It's a high barrier to entry, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
And so doing this like this and then just making everything user friendly is the beginning of the path for mass adoption.
Yep.
And then people might understand that if this is easy enough for use, then people might because it happens like that. People meet the product, they say, "Oh, it's too complicated." Oh, all right, it's fine. This blockchain is very interesting. I'll do it in 3 years.
Yep. And a few years has gone and it's completely changed, you know.
Exactly. So first we have to be user friendly.
Yep.
Then we will be able to explain the advantage of the technology. And
Yep.
right now I have met many people that saying blockchain will solve the third countries problem, etc. It's not possible. It's not the solution for everything. It's just we have to make small steps. From the I believe the fintech is the first one. But it also influences us in many cases, like the banking,
Yep.
money transfers, like the
Insurance.
insurances,
Yep.
and just like the trust. And if this changes, it changes how we purchase product, how we pay. Maybe people understand the tokens, and basically tokens are already going in the life. Because if you look at the game industry,
Yep.
and you look at the Steam or other prepaid, basically the prepaids
Yep.
are the tokens.
Yep.
You just make the prepay with the fiat money, and then you have a card, which basically is a token, and you can buy electronic game goods and the skin or something. So it's happening already for
Yeah.
a long time, but just people don't think it that way.
I think because, you know, online gaming is, it's massive, but people don't realize that it's massive as well. So the normal people, you know, that are walking down the streets who aren't involved in gaming and things like this don't recognize that, one, the gaming industry is massive. That's fundamental. So then they don't then realize that crypto and blockchain is being used actively in those industries as well. So there's a lot. I always believe that it starts with education. It starts with actually teaching people about what the movement is about. Maybe not necessarily about all of the technical details, but we dive into all of that as well, depending on the session. But just like you don't need to know how an engine works in a car, you just need to know how to drive it to get from A to B. You know, these people will need to have some sort of level of knowledge to actually bring themselves, you know, into the world that we love as blockchain. So that's hugely important. So I agree. At the moment, we're well off solving everyone's problems in the world, and it shouldn't be that this technology is used for that ultimately, because it won't. You know, you can't solve human irrationality, and that's part of what this session is about. Actually, it's around the economics behind tokenization and the tokens behind blockchain economies. So what have you done in the space of tokenomics and the kind of cryptoeconomics as well?
Well, I have been involved in trading.
Yep.
So like the testing how to pay person from just so I have used the features of the tokens.
Yep.
Like the value and transferring the value. I have been also interested into copyrights in the blockchain.
Yeah.
If you can use it somehow, this is my personal like the thing. Plus I have been involved into smart contracts,
Yep.
which is some feature of the tokens.
Yep.
It's a kind of utility tokens. What else? Well. What's important for me in this whole movement, and maybe some people should understand it, that just the blockchain was created by people for people. So, from my understanding, it was more like a social movement at the beginning, not economic movement or money movement or like a financial movement.
Yep.
Yes? And it was created for people just to make some things easier for them. But of course, it got massive at one point, and the money came and it complicated many things. It should be easy at the very beginning. Like
Sure.
the anonymity is a factor here. And I believe it was created because people were fed up with the government, with the overall, like there was too much control from the banks, governments to the personals. But of course, it was created to get some anonymity for people. But of course, people took advantage of that and just. But it's saying that there is like bad things in the internet, like the cheat abuse, pornography. But itself, internet is not a bad thing. It's not the same like the blockchain. Yes.
Anything good, people will use it for bad.
Just people are like that.
And that's why token economics and crypto economics is so interesting and important, because we can manage people's behaviors and incentivize them to actually behave in certain ways when you're interacting with a blockchain network, which is hugely interesting when we think about you can interact in the internet freely in some spaces, but then you have you have Facebook or you have Twitter, and there are certain rules that you have to play by, and there's no real incentive mechanism behind them, and there's also no real punishment mechanism unless you get banned, you could get blocked, all of these different types of things, right? But like you've seen with creating a smart contract, you actually have to put some kind of token into the smart contract to make it live, and that is part of the incentivization mechanism and also the punishment mechanisms, right?
Yes, but there are also some rules that if
That's
you
what I mean.
put into the smart contracts, and people should follow the rules in order to get the use from the smart contract.
Absolutely, and it's an ecosystem is what we're speaking about. So so this is the Tokenomics Toolkit experience, and what we will go through is the first of all the concepts behind tokenomics and cryptoeconomics, so that we have a clear understanding, because quite often we speak to different people and they have different ideas of what it actually means, how it actually functions and works.
You mean the tokens or the blockchain or?
Well, all of it,
All of them?
but we're specifically
Yeah.
talking about the token economics
Okay.
today. So there's a kind of misnomer about what tokenomics is, right? And then we'll kind of go into a new framework that we've created. So this will provide a kind of conceptual framework that you can try and apply to when you're looking at the economics behind tokens and tokenization. And also looking at, if you're developing and you're looking at smart contracts, it'll be especially interesting for you to understand maybe the dynamics of the participants within the actual ecosystem. So that is what we're going to go through, and then if you have any questions, any concerns, then you can fire away. So on the table, these are our maths blocks, and these are just a bit of fun. Basically, when we're kind of speaking and stuff like this, if there's more people, usually we create a blockchain during the session.
Okay.
And it's just something to like represent what we're speaking about. And also, people love it because they're like, oh, okay, I can just play around with this and fiddle around. So feel free to do that. These are tokens in our world today. And what I want to do with these is use them as like proof of stake. So like in a blockchain network, we can stake our tokens, just like we do in a smart contract or a proof of stake consensus related blockchain. And I want to stake these based on the confidence that you have behind your answers that we're going to go through, right? So you have 10 tokens, I have 10 tokens, and if you're really confident, go all in, just like you're in poker, and you stake all of them. You can lose them, I haven't thought about that, but we'll go through it and we'll see. And if you're not so confident, then don't stake as many tokens. So that's that. And we would use these, but we don't need to use these today. But they're buzzers, so you can buzz them. and we would go around the table and ask some questions and stuff like this. So, could you write down what you believe the definition of token economics is?
Token economics in general.
Back in 1 second. Put this just here.
Okay, so in general, I think it's a system that defines the usage, functionality, and features of tokens in general.
Great, yeah. It's pretty much what it is at a high level.
Yes.
So, a lot of people believe that tokenomics is actually about money and what the price is maybe going to be of tokens and stuff like this. It kind of dictates that, but actually what tokenomics can be seen as is three things. It's essentially a subset of cryptoeconomics. So cryptoeconomics is the kind of overall umbrella for how participants are actually interacting in the network and with a blockchain. But within cryptoeconomics, you have the subset of tokenomics, which is everything relating to the token, like you mentioned, and that is managing people's behaviors, it's incentivizing them, and then also it's punishing them if they do something wrong, right? Or it's wrong by the rules of the actual network. So yeah, good one. So this is the Tokenomics Toolkit,
Okay.
and in there we have a couple of things. So in most of our experiences, we usually do just a high-level human glossary to allow people to understand some of the concepts that we're going to go through, right? So first of all, the economics of tokenization is the first part. And economics of tokenization is a new kind of, or a different way to describe tokenomics. Because tokenomics is not just about the tokens, etc. It's also about how you apply economics to tokenization. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So this is a better way to explain that, because tokenomics is kind of a mashed up word, whereas economics of tokenization makes it a bit clearer for people to understand. Any questions on that?
No.
You don't look convinced.
No, I'm convinced. Just so instead of saying tokenization, say economics of tokenization.
Economics of tokenization.
Yeah, like just to put the pressure on the economics.
Yep.
People understand that economics was economy.
Yep.
And then you put economy of a token.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
simple words.
Yep. So then you have the token economy.
Okay.
What do you reckon that part is?
Sorry?
What do you think that part is?
Token economy. I would connect this with the features of the token. Maybe like the value on how to use it, like trade it, or more like in this meaning, like an economy of a token would for me it would be connected more with some value of
Yep.
the token.
And what its use is there?
Yeah.
How do you use this token? What is its economy? So there's features and properties of the token, which we'll go through it a little later on, that actually bring the token into being useful in an economy. Just like you have dApps, right? You need a token in order to kind of interact with the dApp and interact with the blockchain. So, yeah, token economy is another one of the features that we'll go through. Then you have token economic design goals. So this is going a little further into what tokenomics and cryptoeconomics is, but we've created this framework that allows for people to very simply start to look at the different pillars of what token economics are, right? But you have to have some kind of design goals behind what you're trying to achieve and looking at the objectives and the outcomes of what you're trying to achieve.
Okay, so for example, you have like utility token, and so this might be like the goal to create tokens to using for platforms, for example.
Yep.
Or you have the like the savings token.
Yep.
For like for transferring value from. It's like these design patterns.
Design patterns, yeah. Design patterns, design goals. How are the economics behind the token actually meant to be applied?
Okay.
And what are the goals behind that?
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, it's my friend Dylan, who does a lot of this stuff with Nodeunlock, always says, if you find something complicated or something is complex, say it backwards. So the goals to design the economics of your tokens.
Yes. Okay. Yeah,
And it works well.
It works.
Yeah.
So I know the goal, transfer the value, the saving token,
Yep.
like the goal use for something, like,
Yep.
and you create the utility token. Right?
Yeah. Exactly. Then you have, and these are the three pillars of the actual framework for the tokenization. So the first part is market design. So what kind of market are you actually looking to design your token and your economy for? What are the participants that you're looking to actually provide the economy for? Those are the kind of features that you start to tease out when you're looking at market design and looking at the objectives of what the market is meant to be doing, right? So you would start to look at, customer analysis, and a lot of what people misunderstand about blockchain is it's an amalgamation of different technologies being used in a very unique and specific way, but in fact, there's a lot of stuff that happens in the centralized world and what we've used before that actually filters and bleeds into what we do with blockchain. So when you're looking at creating a centralized company, you would need to look at what are your customers, your target market, how big is your target market, and doing analysis and demographic analysis on who the participants are. So this is the first kind of pillar, market design. And the second one is mechanism design. So this is actually a large part of what you need to do in order to actually create your tokens. And what this relates to is the actual blockchain mechanisms. So how is your kind of governance structure going to actually look like? How are people going to participate? The other parts are, so like market thickness as well. How much congestion do you need or do you not want in your network? Looking at how the actual token is going to flow through the actual ecosystem, that's what you would look at for the mechanism design as well. And then you have the actual token design. So the third pillar is token design. And token design is everything to do with the actual token, right? So if you're looking at designing the token, you have lots of different economic models that you would need to understand that would need to be applied to the token design. So if your token is being used for a supply chain, for instance, does it need to have specific game theory behind it? So managing the actual outcomes of the token, how it interacts when people actually participate with it, etc. So these are token design elements. So that, in a nutshell, is your human glossary.
Okay.
Any questions on that?
No questions. Just some I mean, I understand the themes,
Yep.
but it can get really complicated underneath because if
Absolutely.
you want to design a token or design the mechanism of a token, it's really complicated
Yes.
to give a good solution from the start.
Yes. And that's part of the issue with a lot of the use cases that we see, right? Because people have struggled to actually understand the right economics for their token economy and how that actually applies to their use case, or they've not even bothered to look at it.
Yeah, but I would put it even in the real world. If you set up a company, then you need to make a business plan, and then
Yep.
the target group, everything is the same.
Very similar,
If
yeah.
you have the bad setup goals, like the bad targets, then you will fail. The same here.
Yep, absolutely. So there's lots of, and you've hit the nail on the head. There's lots of concepts that are coming from the centralized world or the world that we already know, and they filter into what we're trying to create. But there are also lots of nuances, right? And people haven't, designed tokens that interact with different participants like they have been now. So it's very new. Um, and so my perspective is it's one of the fundamental things that will lead to success of your actual project. If it's going to be using a token, you need to get your token economics right, or at least have put a lot of thought into how they actually work.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that is the human glossary. So we always give people something to take away in relation to carrying on the learning. So if you do you have a phone?
Yes, sure.
Great. You're going to scan that QR code, and it will take you to the glossary.
Okay, I have a QR scanner.
Great.
Hello.
Great stuff. So this takes people from kind of the blockchain 101 understanding, but it also has a list of resources that are really, really helpful to take people through the journey of understanding different concepts around blockchain, but then also different concepts around token economics and cryptoeconomics.
Wow, that's a lot of hard and interesting subjects. Each one of them.
Yeah.
That you have right there.
Yeah. So feel free to share that around so you can use it. Hopefully it helps you kind of conceptually understand some of the stuff. So the next part in the toolkit is kind of understanding the concepts or the elements within cryptoeconomics and token economics. So we spoke about it at high level there, but this is to piece together what the concepts are. So there you go. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to look at these. So basically it's a Venn diagram. And essentially parts of the actual diagram lead to and depict what the elements are of cryptoeconomics.
Right.
Right? So you need to put these in the right location in the diagram.
Can I write on it?
Absolutely.
Okay, I need to take a minute.
Yeah, go for it.
It's not a token, it's not a network, it's a blockchain, how it works.
You can scribble it out if you like.
System properties. System properties are, I would say, I have nothing here. So the basic economics is like initiative.
Incentives.
What does it mean?
So when you're incentivizing people, do people get coins for doing something like proof of work when you mine, or do they get incentivized to participate in your network or blockchain?
Okay, so system economics. How to put it? I will put it in blockchain because this is how the proof of work is the blockchain platform. And so I'll put it one and two.
So tip is there's only one answer for each of the elements.
Data of the past has to go to the blockchain, not to the token. Token doesn't carry the information. So okay.
Yeah, great reasoning.
And system properties in the future. So it's more likely to go here. And this is just an example, yes?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's part of A.
Game theory, I know, but the properties. Okay, so it's like that?
Yeah? Okay, good. I liked your reasoning when you were going through that because you were understanding what a token actually cares about, what the blockchain platform actually cares about, and then where the elements would go in terms of the timing as well. So talk me through why you believe that.
Okay,
That is
so
like that.
these three are simple because there are the design patterns, like the blockchain platform,
Yep.
network economics, and token properties would create the crypto economics in general, yes? And then we had three features, and data, basically blockchain is about the data, yes? It's distributed ledger. So data is in this distributed ledger, so it has to go to the blockchain platform,
Yep.
not to the token, or to the economics token. Doesn't carry the past information. Token is this just thing to send to use in general, like just like a fuel for a car.
Yep.
Yes. So data had to go to the blockchain platform, and then when you explain me what this means, so it was more connected with the token. How if you send it, if you can you do a full? You can full the car, you can burn it to run it, or just like the use cases or the features of the token more likely than the economics, because economics is in general like the system properties in the future, saying that, for example, for now we have so many fuel tokens, in future we will generate, or like in Bitcoin there is set fixed amount of fuel, like tokens, so this is more what will happen in future, that we create more, or we burn, or we never create more. So
Yeah, great.
I believe like that.
Yep, good reasoning. So I've got it here. Next on. So first of all, blockchain platform is the first ring, and you're right about the blockchain platform being relating to data, right? So the blockchain platform has rules baked into it that actually help it deal with, for instance, the Byzantine generals problem, where you're trying to send information through a network or through to another person or participant, and you have to manage bad actors, right? So that's the consensus algorithm behind it as well. But also it holds the information as well, which we'll see in a second. And the second part, which is both of these two circles are cryptoeconomics, right? So we're speaking about how the actual blockchain network functions, and the network economics are in relation to things like game theory. What kind of outcomes do you actually require when sending information through your network to then manage the bad actors potentially, or participants that are not doing their jobs, or crashes, etc. So what are the network economics behind that? So those two are what we term cryptoeconomics.
Okay, so this network economics a little bit like the rules, set of rules. So, for example, for programming language, or it could be the virtual machine
Yep.
that overwatches the rules and makes sure everyone follows the rules.
Yep. But it's also baked into some of the protocols, right? So you bake it into the network economics in terms of, maybe it's the virtual machine or EVM in Ethereum, which you bake in there. But then you also have the blockchain platform as a kind of aggregate being and ecosystem that you have to figure out how do participants actually interact. And then you have the third circle, which is the token economics. And that is, like you mentioned, in relation to actually how does this network look in the future and manage people's interactions in the future. So if we show the whole diagram, you have, first of all, data of the past, because the blockchain is holding data that flows through it, like you mentioned in the ledger. Economics of the present, right? So what are the economics behind the actual network and the participants that are interacting? And then you have the system properties in the future, which is a defined future, right? So when you're coding, like you mentioned, you code and you create smart contracts, you create an actual blockchain network, you need to understand how the system properties are going to manage people's behavior years in the future. And just like we have, you know, in Bitcoin's case, we have 21 million Bitcoin ever in existence. That's a monetary policy that's baked into the actual code into the network, and it's a defined future. So we know that, okay, in certain, you know, years, we'll have X amounts of coins that have been actually, you know, circulating potentially, or the total supply will be a certain amount at a certain time. So that's monetary policy. So that is really what token economics, or the economics of tokenization, is about. And that's the difference between cryptoeconomics, which is more about the actual blockchain and how that works in relation to the technology of the network and people's participation in that. And then you have the actual token economics, which is in relation to more of the tokens and how people are going to interact in the future. Make sense?
Yes, sure.
Awesome. So those are two distinctions. And this we mentioned earlier about cryptoeconomics versus tokenomics, and this just shows you that cryptoeconomics is the overall kind of category. So Lisa, who actually created this, she likes to explain it as, you know, cakes are the kind of overall category, which is cryptoeconomics, and then tokenomics is cupcakes, which is a subset of cryptoeconomics.
Yeah.
Yeah? Work well?
Yeah, the cryptoeconomics is in general, like the world economy, and the tokenomics is like country economy.
Yeah.
It just simple words more.
Yep,
not
but
very
they both have economic principles and science behind them. Just they're used in different ways.
Yeah, it's like European Union and the country European Union
Yes.
follow the overall rules on a lower level.
Yep.
But you still have to obey the general rules.
Yeah.
Or you get.
EU and the UK, which is a contentious one.
That's tricky.
So yeah, that is kind of what cryptoeconomics and tokenomics can be related to as well from an analogy perspective. Great. So again, here's some more resources. These are different resources.
Okay.
And it's a list of, I think, over 100 token economic resources that hopefully you'll find really interesting and helpful to carry on your journey as well in relation to tokenomics.
Just a second, I'm trying to save it.
Sure.
The best thing.
But it's still, you know, very it does create precedent. For instance, first of all, again, depending on the
Going to work. There we go. So these are a list of resources categorized by the pillars and tokenomics versus tokenomics. And it's everything from research papers to blogs to just really interesting articles, etc.
Oh yes, it's very interesting. It's basically it's like a Google for information on blockchain.
Yep.
So very very precious.
Yep.
For people who try to find out more information at the sources. I have been doing something similar on smaller level just to hold on the information.
Awesome.
It's like being accessible. It should work as well. When I get the Wi-Fi,
Right.
you download the documents.
Yep. Awesome. So that is that's part of it. So then we're going to speak about the actual framework, right? So we're speaking about the design goals behind several of these. So when we're speaking about, for instance, market design, what do you reckon is part and parcel of what market design, what are the elements we need to consider? So we've spoken about it at high level. What are the other elements?
Right. Market design for the token. So
Not just the token, but then it's the ecosystem that you're creating, isn't it?
who do you want? Who is the target group?
Yep. Target group.
And give you an example, or should I come up with some solution?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so for example, I have been thinking about something, and I came up with idea for e-gaming industry,
Okay.
where people trade with the skins,
Yep.
which is one of the biggest. For example, the trading skins for CS:GO bring the top is the most profitable gaming company in the world for the past year, trading for the skins. So it could be done in the blockchain. Just transfer the value one skin,
Yep.
which is digital itself already, from one person to another in the rightful way.
Yep.
So let's target the group. It will be like e-gamers.
Yep. And then you would probably want to look at, doing customer analysis on, how big is the market for these skins?
Yep.
What type of participants are actually using this? What do they look for? What are the kind of rules that you want to understand need to be put into your actual ecosystem? And start understanding from the kind of objectives and outcomes first, right? So start with the end in mind and work backwards to understanding what that looks like.
Yeah, you have to create the demand for it.
Yep.
And the demand could be that now you cannot buy it. You are not sure if it works before you buy it. First you pay, and you
Yep.
are not certain that it works. So due to the blockchain, you can check if this is the rightful code and it has not been used before.
Yep.
And if you put it in the smart contract, which is a feature of a token, which comes into tokenomics, then you can make a smart contract and pay for it if it works.
Yep. So these are all things that you can start to conceptually bake into what you want to create ecosystem-wise, and then manage it with token economics to make sure that participants act accordingly, or if you have bad actors, they're punished.
Exactly. You make the set of rules. If
Yep.
you set the wrong if you set the wrong code,
Yep.
you're not getting paid.
Yeah.
It's like the escrow in a way.
Yeah. Exactly. So that is great examples of what you would look at from a kind of market design perspective. There's lots more. When we spoke about, we're keeping this kind of high level. When you dive into the elements of what comes into designing the markets, designing the actual tokens, designing the actual mechanisms that people need to use and the technology needs to use, it gets very complicated, right? So we're skipping around a bit, but anyway, token design. What would you reckon needs to be included in designing tokens? The elements.
Well, like the features like
Yep.
if it can be transferable, if you can
Yep.
transfer it,
Yep.
transfer. So if you need to do transferable,
So when you speak about transferable, are we speaking about fungible versus non-fungible? As in, you can divide it and you know, sell it to different participants, or if it's like non-fungible, for instance, you might have a skin that is only owned by one person and one token.
well, it's a good question. I would say that it's not connected with the skin, but it's connected with some value that the token has itself.
Right.
And we can define that the skin is worth some amount of the tokens instead of describing connecting with the skin or the digital product with the token because different products can get a different value depending on whatever rarity or whatever. So I would say that you have a token that is transferable from user to user, so they can exchange it via one product or to another. So the token has to be transferable, has some amount, like let's say the token is one token.
Yep.
Uh,
But do you want then to allow people to sell, small amounts of that skin? Because that's the difference between non-fungible and fungible, right? So where you have, we have, a token that represents one skin, which might be a really rare skin, right?
okay.
So one for one. And if you want it to be non-fungible, people would have to buy this in whole, right? So
Okay.
it's only owned if you have the whole token, and you can only sell the whole token. Whereas if you have fungible, you can then sell 20% of my skin because I might want to rent out 20%, and it starts to change the dynamics and properties of your token.
Okay, that's a tricky question. What if you fix the value of the token with some other value?
Yeah, you could. What are we speaking, like stablecoin?
Yeah.
Are we speaking security? Are we speaking assets?
Let's say that we connected with a stablecoin like Tether.
Yep.
So let's say the one token is worth one Tether, and then if we have an E product, then we say what's worth like 100 tokens. Then we transfer it like that.
It's still not quite getting to the question of is it fungible or if it's non-fungible. Should you allow people to sell part of the actual token and skin or not? I mean, we're not going to fix this in this conversation, but it's something to think about. But what we haven't also spoken about is, so we're making assumptions at the moment. We would need to then go back to our market design to understand the customer analysis perspective of,
Yeah, what
so
they need.
what do they need? Or actually, what do they want?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not
So,
able to
I-
answer it.
no, it's great, but these are the concepts that we would need to go through if we were looking at designing, our tokens, our economy, and understanding how that actually interacts with the market that we're creating.
Well, if you would say it's fundable, which means if I have one token, but its real value is very high compared to other tokens
Yep.
because it's like the X scheme, and then we have another token that represents the Y scheme. So people know that this is very rare. So and say, okay, so I sell like you 0.5 for this one, and I get this token, but I only get 0.55 of this token because I already sold it. Yes, so I
Yep.
have one Y and 0.95x, and someone gets 0.x. That means fundable.
Yep.
So go for that.
It's all possible,
Yeah,
but you have to have the economics to actually manage this.
Yeah, but the other question is, if people want to use it that way, that you need to have a one token in full just to reveal it in real life, then it doesn't make sense because you still have to buy this to use it. You know, like if you want to, let's say this represents like a digital twin.
Yep.
Not a digital twin because it's not in real life, but a product. Yeah. So this is one like a twin, one twin, and another one is some scheme. Yes.
Yep.
And still, if you want to reveal it, use it in game, you need one, not point something because you can have half of the scheme.
Sure.
So then,
What I'm more getting at though is so if you have a fungible token, rather than you're actually selling parts of it to then go and buy another thing, it's more like you're able to buy parts of a skin to then take on some of the positive or negative increase or decrease of price.
okay. So
It's like rent,
yeah,
right?
I understand. So then you buy it, then the value goes up, and you resell it back, but you get 2 times Y for it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you can maybe, depending on the price of your original skin, purchase that skin outright.
Yeah.
So all of this kind of stuff. So yeah, so that's good. And finally, mechanism design.
So mechanism design, you have to define the interaction between users. What are they able to do? If they're able to interact with each other,
Yep.
or if they have some platform like the middleman, because there might be some middleman between them. Let's say you make a platform that where you post all the, but it will be centralized, yes, like where the place where is player N and B and they put their offers and just it tweaks, it works and works. But if we go via, then then I would say people can create a smart contract saying that I want to say this for that exchange, so they can interact directly due to smart contracts. So I would go for that.
Yeah, so it's things like
make a mechanism
interactions.
that people can make a smart contracts.
Yep.
And this is, let's say, the smart contracts are for free. They don't you don't. If we make some algorithm that is not proof of work because we would need the miners, but if we go like delegate or proof of stake instead, then the cost could be zero, just like a private blockchain, and then people. But it can be private because I would go the public with DPoS, so the costs are really low, so people can use it and just interact with each other with low cost.
So DPoS or delegated proof of stake could be something, but you would have to establish, and do lots of testing on different mechanisms to understand this, right? So it's all very well and good as saying, oh, well, maybe you could use this or pluck, this type of consensus algorithm from here to there because of the elements. Like, for instance, you're mentioning cost, which is a great one. The cost of actually participating, the cost of managing the safety and security of the network, things like this. But that's all parts of mechanism design as well, when you're trying to think of, in this ecosystem, in this specific use case, how are people meant to interact or the things meant to interact? And then also what kind of security do I need for my network? Because it's not just about security in terms of, looking at ports that are open and the actual like nuts and bolts of things like this. It's a security element is in a blockchain is actually part of the economics, right? Because it manages people's participation and incentivizes or punishes them. So that's all the economic kind of structure. The other part is governance. What's your governance structure that you need to actually bake into either bake into the network which is on-chain governance, or off-chain governance, where you're actually dealing with people in the kind of meat world, right?
So what about the like two things that come into my mind? One is like the user interface. This is very
Yep.
important.
Yep.
I don't think maybe it's not mechanism design, but also it has to be easy enough for people to use it,
Yep.
just to start using it. It's like you have to write some code, just run it. People
Yep.
will get successful, which means you will get mass adoption.
Yep.
And another part which is important is like the government rules that are
Yep.
above you, and you have to obey them in order to run any business.
That's what I mean by well, that's part of governance, but it's also like regulation.
Regulation.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You would look at these types of things. So you mentioned, it needs to be usable. We speak about usability in the sense of, people actually interacting with it, but then we also need to have usability in relation to developers being able to create, either participations or maybe it's dApps on top of the network, things like this. All of that comes into usability, not just pretty UI usability on the front end, but you also need the usability in terms of how the developers or technical people or other participants will actually need to interact. So you think about that as well in mechanism design.
Yeah, and if you are talking about the skills that you have to at least talk and make sure that the games or game creators that these products are in use,
Yep.
they'll just work with you together in order to create it.
Yep.
So they can say they can make a mechanism that will exclude you from the. You won't be able to trade off site the in game or something. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So you can create the environment, but it won't be useful because it will be closed environment.
Yep.
So and then
All parts of how you actually create the
I think this is
ecosystem.
essential because when you talk with the big players
Yep.
in the industry, then they dictate the rules. And if, like, for example, you can have an idea and try to figure out something to do with Netflix, but they won't
Yep.
do it. They will do it themselves. They don't need you.
Yep,
So
yep.
that's always the problem.
Yep. How do you incentivize people to use your network in the first place? How do you incentivize people to continue using it? And that all comes into, network effects and stickiness. Or lock-in is another one is similar. So how do you make sure that your network it has kind of a lock-in effect, or what are the lock-in effects, right? So just like, for instance, you might use WhatsApp or Facebook, etc. How sticky is that? Usually it's relatively sticky because the majority of people, especially in Europe, use Facebook or WhatsApp to communicate.
Yeah.
So ultimately, they have the network effect already of your, ecosystem, and you have to either participate because that's where everyone communicates, or try and get something that is an alternative that people want to use.
That's a big question always, and
Yep.
it changes something. It's of the topics like WeChat and so on is great
Yeah.
subject to discuss.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll leave you with that one because that's a bigger topic. But we go into that kind of stuff with our sessions and show people the concepts and teach people about how you can kind of conceptually think of. It's not just decentralize everything and decentralize technology. It's also looking at the concepts that happen in the world already and how that maps to what's going on in the decentralized world, which is I find that fascinating because there's a lot of stuff that we'll start to see, in the next 5 to 10 years. It's like, wow, this is truly revolutionary, but we think it is very far off at the moment.
Yeah, but it's happening. Like the decentralization is happening. If you
Absolutely.
look at even if the centralized apps,
Yep.
a lot of companies like the e-shops, e-commerce, they move from like the stationary servers, they move into the cloud solution.
Yep.
Let's say the cloud still stands somewhere,
Sure. But you have multiple
but
same.
at least
Yeah.
you are not contacting with the one machine, but with the cloud. So this is
Absolutely.
like a step forward
Yep.
for the whole industry. Not
Yep.
so all
And
the e-commerce, like all the big players
Yep.
use the cloud, which is like in the middle, in the between,
Yep.
true decentralized, but still,
it's still decentralization.
yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's a really good point because we show people that in a lot of our sessions, what is centralized versus decentralized and how that blends together. Because Airbnb, Netflix, Facebook, all of that have different servers in the cloud, or they are the cloud,
Yeah.
in different locations, and that is sort of semi-decentralized in a way, because you don't have a central server serving everything up. And that's something that people are like, oh, okay, I already use this stuff. And once people start to get that, it clicks. People are starting to understand a lot of the concepts. On your phone, I have a fingerprint reader or a face reader, right? That uses hashing. Hashing is a fundamental part of what blockchain is all about. So we use a lot of the concepts that are in the technologies that we use every day, every minute maybe, or every second, that blockchain is kind of underpinned by.
From my experience, like was this work of Notable? Someone told me about that, and when there is a new technology coming into the market, it was the same with the smartphone, like the Apple. And so the people like when the first Apple phone was created, there was like the e-books.
Yep.
You had it, and they put it on the bookshelf.
Yep.
So people got more familiar with it. It was more comfortable.
Yep.
So they could visualize
Yes.
that it was digital book, but still on the
bookshelf where
with
they
the wooden
usually-
one.
yep.
People get familiar with that. And right now, when people get used to it,
Yep.
it just got more minimized.
Yep.
Yes, so it's like more custom, or you can do different things.
Yeah.
And the same with like the sticky notes.
Yep.
It was on the paper. You could just write or something. And right now it's totally different. But this simple visualization allowed people just to get familiar with the technology and just move forward.
Yep.
So it's the same like that.
Yeah.
People just use the mobile phones, desktops, and it all together makes it like the pushing the the
Small
whole,
incremental changes. Even though lots of people say incremental change is not innovation, it's partially innovation, and everything that is improving on existing technologies or ways of being as a human actually does change the way, like you mentioned, our perception of what we're interacting with and the infrastructure.
in our not only perception but our expectation.
Yes.
Because once we are once you can like watch the Netflix on your mobile, you demand more and more convenient and
Yes.
easy solution. Like if you make a money transfer, why I should wait 24 hours? I
Yep.
want it to be instant. And this pushes like the fintech just to use digital money. Maybe
Yep.
not cryptocurrency, but digital money.
Yep.
So because people are expecting that, because they take the samples from entertainment sector, so and it influences all us together. So,
Yeah.
so if you are used to some comfortable, quick solutions, you expect it to move forward, and this like blockchain, you allow like insurance. Why I should go somewhere, find something? I just want it. I'm going. I want to click, scan my fingerprint,
Yeah.
and wow, I know.
It's amazing to see how quickly technology has actually enabled human beings to progress, and we're still in the very early days of technological advancements, right? And we speak about blockchain being and AI and machine learning being this technology that's going to change the world, but in the grand scheme of things, we're still very, it was only about, 40 years ago that we had real consumerism. and capitalism that started properly.
This was like even false. Like 100 years ago, the technology was totally crawling.
Yep.
And right now we say we advance. What happens in the next 10 years?
Yeah, yeah. And on that note, Casper, it's been a pleasure.
Yes,
Thank you for
same.
joining me.
Very
Cheers.
interesting stuff.
I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, this is just what comes into my mind when we're discussing about the progress in technology
Yep.
in general for human beings. Like, because I believe that like when starting with like WeChat, and
Yep.
I don't know if you're familiar with that, but I went to China
Yeah,
this year.
you have to pay
and
with
it hit
WeChat
me-
everywhere.
Yeah, it hit me like that when I went to the bar and it was like the QR code.
Yeah.
And I was not familiar why it's there. I thought it's free Wi-Fi. But then
okay.
someone explained to me that they have everything integrated into WeChat payments, social media. This privacy issue over there, but they just come to the bar and they scan it, and the waitress know what you have ordered. You don't have to interact with people.
Yeah.
And I ordered some samples with a friend of mine, and I had like a Chinese friend, and I didn't have US dollars with me, and he was paying to the other Chinese guy with the phone.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's like
We are very
yes, I
far
was-
behind
yes,
compared
I
to
was
that.
discussing with my European friends, and there's something. I mean, what are you talking about? In real life use cases, Chinese are more advanced than the average European person. And even if you're Great Britain, what about Romania, Poland, Czech Republic, everything? I mean, what are you talking about? We are 10 years behind,
Yeah,
5 years behind. Yes, and so in 10 years, what will happen? I mean,
I think that's the most exciting part because
might
we
be-
often forget, out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
If we haven't seen it for ourselves, we don't believe it. So just like you went to China, you're like, wow, okay, so this is really advanced. This is what we're talking about with crypto and blockchain, but actually it's already happening in a centralized way.
yeah.
So, yeah, hugely interesting.
Thanks.
Cool.
I will be watching you, man. Like,
Yeah.
there's so many topics like privacy related. That's what I mentioned. Like, the beginning was created for people from anonymity. But I was talking with my Chinese friend, and basically they don't care about the privacy. This is my issue I have. Maybe to change with the consciousness of that, because in Europe we treat client service in the States, but in China, even if you enter like the first, you have you scan your face and you don't use tickets anymore. It hit me very hard because they have stand here, and then you enter, you don't need a ticket because it scans your face. It's like wow.
I find it.
Wow, and right now I'm everywhere. They
Yeah.
know my face. They know some drone and he shows me here, and they know my Casper is here.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting, the world that we create. And I think that there's still lots to be done in terms of privacy and its perceptions of privacy, right, as well, because you don't have privacy in China, like you mentioned, because everything is, overseen by the government and stuff like this. But people may not be that bothered with it because that's what they've known.
Yes.
Whereas we have known about privacy, about security and stuff like this. Hey,
Okay, I don't take your time.
is that your colleague or?
Yes, my
Oh, okay. Hi, Elliot. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, so, is it too late to just join for a second?
Well, we're finished, but
Mike, it was really interesting, Mike, and I told your story about the user interface, how Mike is the designer,
Right.
And he said how our perception changes over the time. When the iPhone was introduced and there was a wooden bookshelf, that's what we're talking about. This his example, to be honest.
great, yeah. It's a great analogy, and it helps people conceptually
It was
think
like a
about it.
completely new technology,
Yeah.
just going into the market, and people were overwhelmed by all the features that it had. So
Yep.
it kind of like, so your notes are on like paper, and your books are on a wooden shelf. So basically, it's just bridging the gap between the technology and like what you already know.
Yeah.
And then once people got used to it, they just moved it to minimal, clean designs.
Yep. And it works. It
Because
works.
you see, this is a great example to which people